This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. The veteran's name is Emmett E. Craven. He served in Vietnam. He achieves the rank of Senior Chief. We are recording this on November 1st, 2015. I am Kyle Bunton, and I am conducting this interview. No relation. So, Emmett, could you tell me about your life before the service, kind of, and kind of give me a rundown on that?
Yes, as he said, my name is Emmett E. Craven. I'm a retired Senior Chief Petty Officer from the United States Navy. And to give you a little background on myself, I was raised up down in Georgia, and to give you an idea of why I decided to go in the military and stuff, I was raised on a farm, and different farms, and we went from place to place, and it was kind of a rough life. And so during high school I played football on the varsity team for 3 years, and I was working part-time at the Ford place, and the lady bookkeeper there, she talked to me a lot about how tough it was in Georgia and how tough it was on the farms and stuff, and so she advised me to go into the military several times. And so at the end of the 11th grade, I graduated from the 11th grade. It was going into the 12th grade, but at that time I decided to go into the Navy. So I went into the Navy February 25th, 1959 in a place called Hummelville, Georgia. We left there, went to Waukegan, Illinois, and I went through boot camp there. And that started off the military career. When I left there, I went on to a carrier for 4 years. And after that, it was just various ships, various military duties, various things. We did so many things, I want to attempt to name them all for you. But I liked the military, and I enjoyed it, and that's why I joined it, just to better myself, and because I was advised that would be a good way to better myself and further my education, and it did further my education. I wound up finishing high school, and then I wound up getting a degree from Georgia, and I also achieved several credits, 2 years worth, in Williams Mary College in Virginia through the military. So it was a good move when I left and went out of there, out of the state of Georgia, and went into the military. But anyway, as time went on, and as I said, I went in 1959, but the stuff in Vietnam peaked up around 1964, sometime around in there. We started sending troops to Vietnam, and people were going and going and going, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And so eventually, in 1969, it came my time to go. I got a set of orders to go, and I was a engineman. That's mechanical engineering. I specialized in diesel engines and stuff of that nature. And so I went out to Mare Island in California to school for 6 months. And in the early part of 1970, I went to the school out there. It was for 6 months, and it was for the escape, evasion, and to run gunboats in Vietnam. And that's what they trained us for. We, as just hypothetically for point of interest, they trained us on like 37 different weapons.
That's something else.
So they just trained us and trained us and trained us to survive and to complete our missions and stuff like that on these gunboats. And gunboats was big time over in Vietnam at that time, and it was very dangerous. They told us when we went into the school that when you went into a combat situation in Vietnam on a gunboat, that you had 11 seconds to live, because there was no place to run, no place to hide. You were there, and they were stationary and hid in the jungle, and you were sitting right there. And those canals that we operated these gunboats in was like, you know, anywhere from 15 to 30 to 40, 50, 60 foot wide. And there's, I forgot your name again. What was
It's Kyle.
Kyle. Kyle.
Yes, sir.
I have given him pictures, and it shows us, or me, behind the guns. And there's no armor there or anything. You're just standing there. And a lot of times when you were going down these canals, these bushes was dragging into those machine gun barrels. So it was a very tenseful situation, and you did that every day. And we went out for anywhere from 8 to 9 to 10 to 15 days at a time, and then we would come in and spend 3 or 4 days in taking on fuel and ammunition and sea rations. For a point of interest, when I was over there, for the length of time I was there, which my total involvement was somewhere in the neighborhood of about the school and the Vietnam and everything was somewhere around 20 months, somewhere or like that, almost not quite 2 years. And I lost, when I started the school, I was 249 pounds, 6'1". When I got back from Vietnam, I was 158 pounds.
Wow.
So
Lost some weight.
my wife didn't hardly recognize me. So anyway, it was, and what we did over there, at that point in time, there was a lot of political upheaval in the White House and around in our government, the United States government, because we had been there a good while, and a lot of people had been killed. In the end, there was something like 52,000 Americans killed and something like 400 and something thousand wounded. We're not talking about arm in a sling, foot with a brace on or something. We're talking about arms and legs and skateboard time for people riding around on skateboards. It was awful. And so, getting back to the point was that the government was, the people was wanting us out of there. Some of the government wanted us in, some wanted us out, and it was to make a point. At some point in time, I got to thinking, well, what's the point? I don't understand what the point is here. And a lot of the American people was like that. They didn't understand what we were doing there, why we were continuing to do that, because we weren't accomplishing anything. We weren't making any advancement towards ending the war in a satisfactory type situation for us and for the country and for the world, for that matter, because we were fighting against the thing, communism. Communism was a big thing back in them days, and you looked to it and you didn't like it, and you didn't like what it stood for, and you didn't want your children to be subjected to this type of lifestyle and stuff like that. So you tried to assist other parts of the world so that they didn't have to be subjected to it. But to make a long story short, in the end there was no, as far as I could tell, no reasonable conclusion to it. I mean, we didn't accomplish nothing over there. I mean, if we did, I don't know about it. But I didn't. After I came out of there, I didn't pursue it and dwell on it. I just did what I was required to do, and I was a patriot American military person, and I still am. And the way it goes is first is God, in country, in family, and in job. And our job is to look after this country because, as far as I'm concerned, God gave us this wonderful country that we live in. And even today, it's a wonderful country, and this is the place I love and the place I want to be. And I'm sincerely not happy as to what's going on now with over in our, we started in Iraq and Iran, and it just goes on and on and on. My grandson did 9 years in the Army and got out. He spent a couple of hitches over there, and he almost met his maker over there. He rode helicopters and run a machine gun, and he was a crew chief on the helicopter and stuff, and I was worried about him. And as I sit here speaking to you, which is a Sunday afternoon, the 2nd of November of 2015, my granddaughter's leaving next Wednesday, going into the military. And and I had brothers in Vietnam and had other brothers in the Army. So we are a military family, and we're a God-fearing family, and we're a country-orientated family. We love this country. So this Vietnam thing, we did so much, you know. We did special operations for the Seabees. We spent a lot of time with the Seabees over there because in the 70s, gunboats were getting kind of like, it wasn't as active as it was before. But when we went into Vietnam, they put you in a place down in Saigon to where they gave you a thing called a 5-day indoctrination period. And as I said before, there was 94 of us. And we were scheduled to go up to Monkey Mountain and relieve a bunch of the American people on the gunboats up there. While we were in the indoctrination place there in Saigon, we got a message that said, don't send the 94 men up here because they did an attack. A sapper squad went in there and did an attack on those gunboats and stuff and destroyed most of the gunboats and most of the men in one night. So then they had to find a place to put us. Hence, I became involved with these boats and gunboats that was affiliated with the Seabees. And so we did a lot of projects for the Seabees and stuff, and that's what I was doing around with the Seabees. And in the end, I became an honorary Seabee, which if I had pursued it and used it, it would have paid for my children's education and college education and other things for me. But I never used it. But anyway, it was a unique situation, those boats, and some of the things we did was unique, you know. And it's hard to sit here and explain to you what all we did do. But at the time, I felt that it was for the good of the country, and whatever we were doing was the right thing to do because my superiors told me that's what I want you to do, and that's what I did because I was a military person. And as far as that goes, I'm 75 years old now, but if I could go and go back and they would take me, I would go today. But they won't take me, so that's neither here nor there. Is there something else you want to talk about?
Maybe tell me what your job was when you got out. What did you do when you got out, and kind of civilian life?
I brought you some paperwork for that. You can film it if you would like.
Yeah, I'm going to add that to the...
Tyler, right?
Tyler, yes, sir.
My memory's not what it used to be.
No, you're fine.
But anyway, when I got out of the military and I came here to South Carolina, I ran into a fellow uptown here, and he wanted me. They were building the VC Summer Nuclear Station at the time, And this was in the year of 1978. And I came here July the 17th, 78. And he says, why don't you go out to DC Summer Station out there and get a job with a nuclear plant? And I said, well, I don't want to. I want to build my house. So I took 6 months and I built my house. And during those 6 months, I talked to this man off and on. And he was always talking to me about that. And one day I ran into him and he had a friend with him, and his friend was a BC Summer man from the nuclear station out there from South Carolina Electric and Gas. And he says, that's the man I was talking about. And he was pointing at me, and so the man says, why don't you come out and fill out an application? And I said, I'm not interested in actually going back to work. I've retired, but let me go back just a little bit though.
Sure.
After Vietnam and stuff, I went to Norfolk, Virginia, and when I retired, I was a ship superintendent in Norfolk, Virginia, in the Norfolk Portsmouth Naval shipyard, and that was a very demanding job, and it was an officer's job, and due to my record and stuff, they gave me that job, and I worked it for 2 years and did a good job, and I brought a letter to that effect. But that was one of the highlights of my life, is that 2 years as a ship superintendent in Norfolk Naval Shipyard. So I wanted to throw that in, and I didn't want to leave it out because it's one of the major accomplishments in my life, and I want you to know that I'm not just a grunt. I did things that mattered.
Absolutely.
You know? And it tells you all I did was carriers. We did overhauls on carriers. I didn't do them. I was the supervisor over like 280 civilians in my part of the department, which was doing mechanical overhauls on these carriers. So, okay, now getting back to where we were at, going back to the nuclear station out there, after I built my house, I went to and met this man, and he says, let's fill out the paperwork and stuff. And so I did fill out the paperwork. And there was numerous applications. There was a room over there that there was nothing in it except applications for that job, because at that point in time in 78, that was the money around Winnsboro, South Carolina. Are we running out of time?
No, we're good. Good.
So to make a long story short, I filled that paperwork out, turned it in, and so they just had a need for my specialty. And they called me the next day. And I went over there, and they sent me to a Dr. Penner to be examined. Well, during the medical examination, it came out that being exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam like I was all the time, I had cancer, carcinoma of the bladder, from being exposed to that. And so I went in the hospital. They operated on me. I was in there with a man. We was in bed next to each other, and he was the same age as I was, had the same thing I had, and he died, and I lived, and they told me, you got a 50-50 shot. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is you're not supposed to be around radiation. There's a lot of controversy about radiation and cancer. So, to make a long story short, I went to them, and the doctor, he told him, he says, I'm turning him down because he's had cancer, and we don't want him around the radiation and stuff over here in this nuclear plant. So, they called me and told me, we're not going to hire you on account of the radiation and the cancer. It interfaces, and we don't think, the doctor doesn't think it's good for you. I said, well, I won't tell you exactly how I said it, but I just told him, you have a need. I'm not looking for a job. So if you want to pursue this, then you're going to have to take care of it. So a day later, they called me back and said, go back and see the doctor. So I went back and saw the doctor, and I don't want to expound on this, but to make a long story short, once again, I went to work at the nuclear power plant, and I stayed 12 years out there and retired out there. So I retired out of the military, and I retired from the nuclear power plant. And that's about it, you know.
That's good.
I hang around the house and work in the garden and stuff now.
I'm going to ask you about some of these pictures you brought, about where they are and what you're doing. I'm going to put them on the video. There was this one's. Find these pictures. Oh, here they are. Okay, so where was this picture at?
This picture, my boats, as I told you before, was headquartered in a place called Ben Samoy, down on the Sonondoc River
Okay.
in kind of central Vietnam. And so we would get a set of orders to go here, or go there, or do this or do that, and that we never went to the same place. I mean, occasionally you cross back over where you'd been and stuff like that, and sometimes you went back to the places, but you went here and there. There was no, the only way I could actually pinpoint that for you is your maps and stuff in Vietnam was cut up into grids. You had numbers across the top and numbers across the side, and they'd say, we want you to go to grid 874, 696. So you look at the map, it's 894, 6, and when they intersected, that's where you went. And they said, when you get there, we want you to do this. There were several things you did, you know. You looked for the Vietnamese crossing those canals with their, they moved everything. All the supplies and stuff were moved on bicycles and back and head and stuff. You didn't see big trucks and trams and stuff like that. You saw bicycles loaded with munitions and stuff like that, and they would be pushing them. They weren't using them for riding, they were using them for transport through these little trails through the jungle, and they would load the bicycle and push them through the jungle. And then they would wade those canals was very shallow, and they would wade the canals and put the stuff on their head and stuff and transport all that stuff, and you would be going along looking for stuff like that, nature and stuff. There's so many things. One of the incidents I can tell you about that might be of some interest to you and your constituents is in the 3 boats, when you saw a boat over there, the motor was on the back of the boat, but it had a long skinny arm sticking way out there, and it was on top of, the propeller was on top of the water. And on account of the water was so shallow. And if a boat was designed to carry 10 people, there was 40 or 50 in it. And one day, they came around the last 2 boats. And when they got around the second boat, they hit the lead boat right in the stern. And the boat capsized. And in the confusion and stuff was 40 or 50 people. We were pulling people out of the water, kids and babies and all kinds of stuff. A boy drowned it, a 10-year-old boy drowned it. So this is something that would be of paramount interest to you people, is to the way this works. When we got back in, the chaplain came, the pastor, and says, where did this happen? And what happened and all that. So I made out the report. And I asked him, I said, what are you going to do? He said, I want you to get me a flight, a helicopter, There was a helicopter bay right over there. And tell it to go to this village here. I won't try to get this straight for you because I don't want to. A village, you know, they would take an area and they would be 8 or 10 huts and stuff here and 8 or 10 over here and 8 or 10 over here. And they would be a village chief, a man in charge of those 8 or 10 huts. And then they would have a compound. And then you had a big dog that was in charge of all of those 8 or 10 spots of huts and stuff. I can't remember the name of them because I don't remember all this stuff. I can't, it's the age.
Yeah.
But to make a long story short, I asked him, how much are you going to pay? See, what he was going to do is go and pay the mother and father for that kid money. And I asked him, I said, if you don't mind my asking you this, Chaplain, I said, how much are you going to pay? And so he told me, something like $50 for the kid. Now, when he got there, I can't think of the name of the whole section. That chief, he got his cut. And then there was another chief underneath him that got his cut. And then they went to the village where the 8 or 10 huts where the guy come from. And they paid his mother and father. And I said, well, how much money do you think the mother and father is going to get? He said about $11. Can you imagine somebody coming to you and paying you $11 for your son?
Absolutely not.
So, you know, war is a terrible thing. There's nothing amusing or funny about it, and a lot of times, especially when you think it's not accomplishing anything, then it becomes unbelievable and unreal. It's just like we're in a situation now. These people, this is personal opinion. This is not public opinion. This is personal opinion. These people have been in this religion since the beginning of time. They've always hated us. And they always will. And nothing we do. I personally believe if you went in there and just did total all-out war and killed all of them except a few, then those few would still believe what they believe right now.
You're talking about the Middle East?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they would change. So you wonder why, you know, why is it like that? But I go to church now, and I've been going for a long time. And I'm a deacon in the church. And, you know, I know in my heart that God has got the big plan. And I intend to work His plan. And whatever He says, then I believe that's right. So
I like that way of thinking.
that's about it. So.
Time where you at, Jake?
28.
28? Can you just get...
What did we get? We still going?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about this one with the rocket hitting the boat.
It's
This is the
just they had they had B-40s and B-51 rockets over there.
Mhm.
And like I said, this was, sometimes you'd just be going along and they wouldn't be 2 or 3 guys out there and they'd shoot one of these rockets. And just like that one, and that's a flak jacket you're looking at right there, and that rocket hit that flak jacket and then went through the jacket and then went through that deck that's behind there, and there was a piece of the rocket down in the engines. The engines are right behind there, down in the deck. You could be riding around. One time we was riding down the Nuke, the river, and it was about dark. And when a machine gun, about every 5th round is a tracer. What that means is you'll see a streak of fire. There'll be 4 bullets come and go, and then you'll see that streak of fire and stuff. So that afternoon we was just cruising along there about dark, and the guy started shooting at the boats. And you could see the tracers. But he actually wasn't, I don't think he was trying to hit anybody. He just shooting, playing or something. things like that happen all the time. And I don't, we shot back a little bit over there, and he shot a little bit over there, but I don't think anybody was hit. He didn't do no damage to the boats, but or anybody. But things like that went on all the time. When you're in a zone like Vietnam, there's a lot of strenuous manpower type labor going on here and there, moving fuel in 55-gallon drums and stuff. I saw a guy get his leg broke real bad with a drum of fuel, and there was accidents all the time. I'm talking about debilitating accidents for people, that really crippled them up for life, and and a bunch of people were killed by accidents. And you never knew what was going to happen. We were in one time. We were sitting around there talking and yanking, and all of a sudden this guy starts shooting, And so we naturally take cover and guns and all this stuff's produced. And to make a long story short, the people that was patrolling the compound there where we were at, they got the guy and stuff like that. He was on drugs and he was just shooting. And, so we don't know how many people he hit. We didn't go out there and ask how many people he hit or what have you. We were working on the boats one time, and we heard this shooting, and I was down in the engine room in that hole there looking. And we heard this shooting, and I came up and stuck my head up. And this guy was drugged up on another boat over there and was shooting at an LST. An LST is a Navy ship. I know everybody saw them. The front end lays down. It opens up and lays down. It's an LST. And he was shooting up on the deck, and there was people. He hit several people up there. The drugs was a bad problem in Vietnam. But you say, well, how do you know it's a bad problem? I just know from things, when I left out of there, I got orders to leave there. They sent me from Ben Samoy, 125 miles back to Saigon. They put us in an old barracks up there, waiting on a flight. You just didn't go up there and get a flight and come home. And so we were walking, me and another guy was walking around that barracks, just that one barracks, but getting ready to go to chow. We were getting food for a change. We counted 127 heroin vials. A heroin vial is about that big with a little screw top on it. And over there it was $3 a day. And at that time over here, a habit like that would have been hundreds of dollars. But over there it was $3. So a lot of them, unfortunately, a lot of the military, the American military came back and they were hooked on drugs. So, and that was another problem, that we had and we still got. Some of them has never got over that. There's American military people now that's in these sick bays around and about that's never got over that war. And there's going to be some more from these wars that we're in right now. But you can't just say this happened here or that happened there. That's just a grid mark on a map. That's what that is. All of this is the same thing. It's just a grid mark. You can't say where it was at. It's just 6 numbers, 3 here, 3 there, intersect.
That's interesting. I think that's good. I think we got plenty.